Okay, our little musical interlude there at the beginning was that was the Rosemary's with Sympathy for the Devil, which is what I've called this um, lecture about to go through. And what I'm really trying to do, as always, is trying to present to you the idea of what Band 6 is. The critical, exploratory, conceptualized response. What does it actually mean to get into that? And in order to do that, therefore, what I'm doing is I'm going to take a different version of Lady Macbeth from the one that a lot of people put, and suggest to you that maybe is less the devil woman that a lot of people like to present her as. If you go on a number of the kind of notes websites that there are, where people put details about characters and allow you to research and all that, and revise, you might find opinions like this about her. Okay? Right? That she is willing to sacrifice everything to be queen. She is stronger, more ruthless, and more ambitious than her husband. She is manipulative and uses several techniques of a skilled manipulator to entice Macbeth into the murder of Duncan. Even she lacks all humanity. Now, these are opinions I'm sure you recognise, that people will quite often say, I'm going to suggest there are other ways of looking at her. Focusing particularly on this, which again I've taken from somewhere else, but it expresses very much what I think right at the beginning. Shakespeare presents Lady Macbeth as a multifaceted character and a complex. One of the things that I would say make Shakespeare what he is, make Shakespeare the genius, is his ability to create characters that have depth, shape to them, and makes them ultimately fascinating. Because in the end, people are still writing and discussing about Lady Macbeth 400 years on. So, if we start from that, I'm going to take you, as I said, to what I think is a more rounded and more critical viewpoint. And I'm going to start by looking at where she started, where we first meet her. It always fascinates me that in the play, we don't even know of her existence until literally a few lines before she enters, when Macbeth mentions going over to his wife, letting her know, or letting his wife know about the fact that Duncan is coming. Apart from that, there is no mention of it, even though she is so significant, so central to it. And then what becomes fascinating, when then suddenly she walks on stage, this person who we could quite easily have missed their existence. She walks on and she is introduced entirely through a soliloquy. Yeah, the first thing we see is her reading a letter from Macbeth, of course. That partially helps us to understand who she is. And therefore, the first words aren't her own. But as soon as she's finished reading that, straight into soliloquy. Now, think about what soliloquy is. Okay? Soliloquy is a device that Shakespeare uses to reveal self, to reveal people's inner characters, to reveal their inner motivations. What they say in soliloquy has to be the truth as far as they see it. We are literally hearing their thoughts. Okay, so they cannot lie to us. And therefore, Shakespeare's made the choice was to begin with her inner self. Now, what makes that even more interesting to me is that that's so contradictory, so opposite to what he's done with Macbeth. As we all know, Macbeth has been presented to us in the first few scenes entirely through other people. So we've heard of him through reputation. Okay? We first of all hear of him through the witches saying they want to meet with him. that straight away creates a connection. Why is he someone they want to see? This supernatural force, this dark supernatural force. Then we get that entire scene that is focused around letting us know that he is, as we know, brave but brutal. He is an incredible soldier, but he is also a ruthless killer. We then go into meeting him and seeing how that matches up to what we've seen already. So it's a very, very different approach to this. And in fact, she reveals herself and motivations before any meaningful interaction. Yes, her soliloquy is broken up by a messenger coming in, telling her that Duncan is. All that's there for is so that we get to see her reaction to that. We already know that Duncan is coming. Not information for us. Not a meaningful interaction. Her first meaningful interaction is with Macbeth at the end of that scene. Before we get that far, we have seen her proclaim that he is going to be king. There is no doubt about it. We see him proclaim that she is going to do whatever she wants, whatever she needs to get in there. Before he enters and she interacts with anyone else, we get to hear her reject her gender and try and invite in dark spirits. That is I would say, very unusual introduction of a character in the entirety of Shakespeare. So why is he doing it? Why introduce her this way to us? Well, it must be because he's interested in her inner self. So we need to look at that inner self quite closely. Okay, think to yourself of her first line. Okay, that's not reading the letter. Her first actual line from her own self. Now, I'm sure you've looked at this before and thought about this. Glance thou art ta'en forward and shalt be what thou promised. Now, one of the key things here, as well as her confidence straight away, yes, that's what you're going to be, which contrasts with Macbeth's, running around with everything, going, oh God, I'm thinking of murder, but it's scaring me. You're going to be that. As well as that, of course, we have the witches link. We have, first of all, the syntactical link. Glamis, Cawdor, King. Same order. You're going to be your Glamis, your Cawdor, you're going to be king. That is exactly what the witches told you. You are Glamis, you are Cawdor, you are going to be king. So her first line, just like his first line, links directly to them. And of course, it's even more than that. There is that phrase, shalt be, within what thou art promised, which is words that they use when they king. Sure, you've all thought before. Now, when they say, how to be Macbeth, it shalt be king hereafter. And incidentally, I've not highlighted elsewhere, but of course, when Macbeth arrives, she does exactly the same thing in her first line to Macbeth. A great Glamis, worthy Cawdor, greater than both by the all how hereafter. Same syntax, okay? And she uses the word hereafter. So that shall be king hereafter. She uses those actual words. This can't be coincidental. I'm sure of it. Now, what that does is it takes us this link that for many say, there you go, evil. That's what we're seeing. See, she is the devil. She's part of the witches. I've heard all kinds of versions. She is, if you remember in that first scene when the witches call on their familiars, Grey Malkin, Haddock, only two of them call on their familiar. People suggest she's the third witch's friend. Now, all of that might well be true and all that might well be there, but does that make her evil? Does that make her a victim? Does that take away her choice? Is she, in terms that we would say from our kind of like horror and all of that kind of idea and our version of worship and all that, is she possessed before we even meet her? Okay? It's an interesting thought to go into there, what his intention is by linking her so quickly to that. And then when she carries on and says, yet do I fear thy kindness, thy nature, it's too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Again, many use this as evidence of, well, look how evil she is. This is the guy who slit open his opponent on the battlefield so that he got disemboweled and humiliated there, cut off his head, carved his way through everybody else. And she's saying he's too kind. Well, what does that say about her if that's too kind? Well, there's another interpretation to this line. We see it as too full of the milk of human kindness. It's human kindness. And there are people who work very closely with the text who think it is. He's too full of the milk of what it's like to be humankind. But it's not that he's kind, it's just he's too human. That, you might still say, that doesn't make it seem particularly good. But again, if you link it to the previous bit, are we seeing that? Are we seeing that he needs to be a little bit more, in tune with this? These her words? It's certainly an interesting idea to think that even her most straightforward lines could be seen another way. Now, personally, I wouldn't go as far as saying, but what I would say is that this is actually showing more her social skills. And that's something else I'm going to come back to in a minute. But just to keep going with this opening speech that she does in part of her, she then follows up with a succession of oppositions, okay? Where she says, you are like this, but not like this. You are like this, you need to be like this, okay? You are great, you don't lack ambition, but you don't have the illness. By the way, illness in this period of time never used for the idea of being. Okay? Illness is never sickness. Illness in this case always is badness for one. Ill in the way that Macbeth uses it when he says it cannot be good, it cannot be ill. Yeah, okay, right? For his the intervention. So it's very much he hasn't got the badness. You can find this thing before. You should go with it. So what do these oppositions tell us? Well, first of all, just like what we've seen before, she's identifying the idea that he wants to achieve this, but he doesn't, he's not quite bad enough. And therefore, that's what they've got to get towards. She's not saying, I'm bad enough. She's saying he's not quite bad enough. And then we've got this balance between highly and holily, which is interesting. What you would do highly, what you would do to get to a high position, you would do holily, you would do, you know, in a good, holy way. Right? Seems maybe a bit too far for him. But again, look at the comparison of the two words, highly and holy. It's almost hypocritical, isn't it? You want to get to the highest thing, but you say you've got to do it in a holy way. You know, the two things don't go together. That prepares for the third one, which is totally hypocritical. You could well suggest that's what she's saying about it. The hypocrite. He wouldn't play false, yet he was wrongly win. Now, what I think about this is cheating. That's what she's talking about. Think of him in a game. So she's saying you wouldn't cheat if you're playing a game, but you would happily win as a result of something going wrong. I suppose, a lot of us will be this. I suppose one way to think about it, imagine Monopoly. Okay? So he wouldn't, like for example, be the banker and when he passes go, pick up three £200, right, three sets of £200 and subtly bring them underneath so he had more money. However, if his opponent went over go and did pick up their 200, he wouldn't tell it. Okay? He'd let him out and say, how many of you in here would go with something like that? But she's saying kind of, oh, isn't that hypocritical? So In these oppositions, what's being posted for us here really is the failings of Macbeth, rather than, as some people will say, I would argue, the nastiness of her. And then when we place it next to other evidence, we could look at this in a different way. This is where I tend to look at it. As I said back there, she is a complex human character. I think she is more human than we think. Now, to make this point, there are 3 roles that we don't associate with Lady Macbeth, but each one of them is addressed in the play. Okay? 3 very female roles. The first of them is the mother. Twice in the play, she addresses the idea of herself as a mother. The first one is in the Unsex Me Here speech. Right? Now remember, of course, Unsex Me Here, we are not dealing with, as some people do in this interpretation, her wanting to be male. That would be re-sex me here, wouldn't it? Unsex me. Remove my gender. And I think she's talking gender in our modern terms rather than what we would term to be your sex, as in your given or born of male or female. So she's talking about that. So she's talking about removing femininity. Why? Because femininity is a weakness. So that's how she sees it. And she lists all the things that makes her feminine. This is one of the reasons, incidentally, why when you're writing about Lady Macbeth, I would always say to you, if you're drawing in evidence from around the play, the example of Unsex Me Here is a really bad quotation to use. Say anything, just tell you factually. What you'd be far better off doing is looking at her examples of what that means, of what femininity is and why it's a weakness. Okay? And one of them comes there. Take my milk and replace it with. It's quite a complex image, and it's a very, very interesting. You get an awful lot out of it. So she's focusing in on feeding, on breastfeeding. She's focusing in on breast milk, right? Now, of course, breast milk is life-giving. That's its purpose. And of course, in a time pre any kind of other option like formula or whatever, without breast milk, your baby's going to die. Because the first 6 months, that's all it's got. Therefore, it not only places that breast milk as life-giving, it also places the mother as the controller and giver. Okay? Makes that idea of motherhood to almost a sacred level, really, of controlling life. So she takes that element, and remember, we know from in a minute that she has had a child. She takes that element and asks to have it replaced with gall, which effectively you can think of as like knockoff. So she says, take that motherly, life-giving stuff that I have and replace it with. I mean, think about the image of this. This is the point where if you breastfeed from Lady Macbeth, she's going to poison you. And considering very few characters in the play are going to breastfeed from Lady Macbeth, she's talking children. Take away my femininity, so any children will die feeding from me. I can kill children rather than give life to them. That's really what's there, isn't it? Now, that might make us sound obviously a lot more evil, and I'm trying to argue that maybe we should see her in a more complex human way. But the very fact that that's how she views femininity, and a femininity that she feels for evil spirits to take away from her, she can't do it herself, suggests to me that she very much sees herself in that motherly role. And of course, that comes back when she brings up the baby she had. I've given that strange moment that some directors make so much of, quite possibly rightly. You know, the idea that revealed to us that she had a child, and apparently that child is no longer there. Death of a child, the motivation for her feeling the way she is. Well, possibly, although I do remember child mortality was absolutely huge at this. So, you know, it wasn't exactly a go back into the period of time that they're talking about, it will be very common indeed. But what's more important to me is the language that she uses. When she's thinking of motherhood, thinking of the babe, and again, notice it's milking again. It's once again breastfeeding that she is using as the example here. That's when she talks about tenderness. That's when she brings up the word. Now, with the exception of her affection for Macbeth, again, I don't really necessarily think is ever expressed in the word love. You're not going to see that language from Lady Macbeth. It's there when she mentions being a mother. So there's two examples there that express that sense she is a mother or was a mother and sees herself that way and sees that as a weakness, which is far more complex and something I think we can actually probably more relate to. Something getting in the way like that. Then there's her as a daughter. So we've got one great female role, we've got the other great female role. One which many of you in here understand better. Others in here, but there's one down there. But plenty of daughters. Right? Face it. If you are female, you're a daughter. So, her as a daughter comes up again, and it comes up at that key moment. Now, again, you'll remember this bit. I've talked about this before, but what I want to think about is why it's so significant. Yeah, it shows her tender side again, potentially. The fact that there is some connection with her father, that is loving in some way, which is why she can't kill Duncan, because he looked like her father. Feels that way. But then again, at the same time, it just reminds us that that role of being the daughter is near the surface. Okay? Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I would have done it. It's right near the surface, the role of a daughter. She's a mother. She's still a daughter. Okay? No matter where her father is now, what's happened to him, she still is a daughter. Complex female human roles. And finally, she's very clearly a woman. When she says in that soliloquy, having pointed out Macbeth's weaknesses, what's likely to keep him from doing it, she wants him to come there so she can, as she says, pour her spirit in him. There's plenty you can do with that as an image. But what I'm more interested in is that what she's saying is she will chastise him with the valour of her tongue, all that impeded. So the way she's going to stop him or get him away from the obstacles to becoming king is through persuasion. It's through her words. The valour of her tongue. Now remember the word valour. Central to this play. It comes up all the way through the play regularly. You particularly should remember it from the second scene when it's used to describe Macbeth an awful time. Described as valiant, and of course famously Valor's minion. Okay? She uses valour when she's trying to persuade him in that one scene 7. It's that kind of intense bravery associated with battle that he has. But her valour is just her strength, her valour, her bravery. Even there's that link with battle. Her bravery in battle comes through her tongue. That's where her strength is. Now, that is not me being intensely sexist and saying therefore she's a woman because she has power in talking. No. It's this idea that Venerable is pretty down there often brings up to me, that she basically knows the limitations in this society. That's all she's got. She is a female in this medieval. Remember, this is medieval. It is not Jacobean. This is set as far back from Shakespeare as Shakespeare is from us. Okay? In this society where there are no other women, right? Lady Macbeth appears briefly and then is killed. That's hardly an advert for female roles. The witches, well, they've got beards, so are they even women? She is the one alone there, and she knows her limitations, and this is the only way she can actually get any kind of power. So there are three key roles that place her, to me, as more human than we think. And therefore, you put in that unsexually here speech, she's trying to escape these roles, and she needs evil spirits to come in and take her over to do this. She needs, remember, darkness to come, so she can't see what her knife is, because she knows she won't be able to go through with it. Now, to really set this up, I want to go to Act 5, Scene 1 to really explore. Absolute key scene, her final scene, of course, the sleepwalking scene. Very significant, very interesting. He put in this month. Remember, she has been gone since the end of the Banquo Ghost. Last time we saw her, and in the last few appearances, we saw. You know, don't ever think that the relationship between her and Macbeth is down in terms of love. Look at those exchanges, and there's very, very clear love and tenderness. Big difference is Macbeth not listening to him. If you look at those exchanges, the last few that they had, she keeps saying things to him, and then he just answers with something completely different. And many of you here might be saying, "Oh, Shakespeare marriages," but there you are. It still happens. She then disappears, and we see her re-emerge in this. Now, obviously, this scene, and there's a lecture I've done this. I think it's on the YouTube channel about oppositions, pairings, and things. One of the things I'd always say to you is look at this scene compared to Act 2, Scene 2, because this is basically being presented to us Lady Macbeth doing exactly what Macbeth does. Literally, the connections are all there. There are so many. But I'm more interested here in the fact that in her ramblings, she, yes, does echo what Macbeth does. But the difference is, and this is really, really good, is that she still retains elements of that strength. The vulnerability is there, but she still retains it. Now, if you think back to when Macbeth was in this situation, he was just entirely vulnerable. When he killed Duncan, down he walks holding his daggers. When he's told to take him back, he goes, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm never going back." You know, he's well aware that means he's going to be caught. The strength in that scene all comes from Lady Macbeth, who takes control. This scene, she has that vulnerability, but she also has the strength. She's like playing both roles at the same time. I'll show you what I mean. So, in her ramblings, one of the things she says there is, "What need we fear who knows it when none can call our power to account?" Again, in most of this, she's imagining talking. I mean, look at that and what that's saying. Because a damn who knows what we've done. Don't do anything about it. Now that, from Lady Macbeth, we saw from Act 2, Scene 2. But then she follows it up almost immediately with, yeah, who would have thought the old man had? A vulnerability that we've not seen. And again, an obsession with that characterised very much Macbeth's behaviour previously. We have her say, again, the vulnerability side. Looking at her hand and the damn spot bit. Will these hands never be clean? Identical to what Macbeth was saying back in the in his scene. But then she follows it up by saying, "No more about my lord. You marvel with this starting." Almost exactly what the role she was taking on in that. Yeah? we don't need any more of this. You're you're messing everything up. We get the vulnerable line about the perfumes of Arabia, which of course is a direct comparison with Macbeth's image of all Neptune's oceans washing the blood from his hand. It's almost the same construction, yeah, the same idea, except hers is intensely feminine. He's talking about Neptune's great oceans can't wash the blood from my hand. She's talking about sweetening this little hand. Remember, this is the one who asked for her feminine and her feminine back. Vulnerability is there. Yes, we wouldn't like these days to say, yes, look, femininity, vulnerability. But we're talking a situation in which I think it's being pretty much accepted as the case. Yet, then goes back to imagine yourself giving an instruction. Wash your hands, put on your nightgown, don't look so pale. Banquo's buried. He can't come out of his grave. Taking control. So you see, she's moving between strength and vulnerability. It's almost to me like she's taken the same role she did in Act 2, Scene 2, but here we are hearing the reality underneath. There are bits all the way through the play where we see that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, for all of their lovely relationship with each other, aren't honest with each other. Back in Act 1, Scene 7, after Macbeth's soliloquy, in which he goes through all the reasons why he shouldn't kill Duncan, turns around to Lady Macbeth and says, "We will proceed no further in this business." Again, incidentally, showing the gender roles in here. Not I will, we won't. He's made the decision. But when he does that, he gives her the reason. And the reason he gives her is not one that he gave in his soliloquy. Bear in mind, his soliloquy are his thoughts. He's lying. Okay. For some reason, he is not telling her the real reasons he's not doing it. He's giving one that he thinks. The beginning of Act 3, Scene 2, which is when he's decided to murder Banquo and when he actually does, the murders actually do, and the two of them are together. She gets a few lines on her own at the beginning, in which she basically says, very like Macbeth, being queen has not made me happy. Achieving my ambition has not made me happy. And she says again, it would be safer to be that which we kill than to dwell in that doubtful joy, to dwell in doubt. So we get that statement from her. Then in comes Macbeth, and immediately she's saying the opposite. Saying, "What's the problem with you? Everything's all right. What's done's done." So we do see that they're not completely honest with each other. Maybe this is what was going on under the surface. Maybe it's where she's got to now. Whatever, again, the humanity is brought to the surface from it. But this is her last experience. Her heart's stone not to feel. I know she's been part of some horrible stuff, but she's ripped apart. Further in this scene, she's quite deliberately connected to the witches, even at this point. First of all, there's a lot of obscure language in which kind of places her along with them. She uses very similar rhythms in her speech, fine rhythms that fit the witches' rhythms. We see her speak in rhyme, and the example there, and of course that's something that they do all the way through whatever they're speaking there. And then the extensive repetition, sometimes in threes, sometimes in moors, which of course they do all the time. And then yes, the sleepwalking, the unnatural troubles. That suggests they have brought it. Remember, sleep is a key thing in the play. Not only is it Macbeth's thing, told by the supernatural. Back in that small little exchange the witches have in Act 1, Scene 3, then they show their pettiness by the first witch saying that because this woman she met wouldn't give her chestnuts, don't torment that woman. Say that. But the way she says she's going to torment, So again, it's something clearly is associated with them, and that's what they're doing. And then we throw in that, we talked about a great deal, the idea that we just saw the valor of her tongue, that her strength, the only place of power comes in her language, and her language has broken apart totally. She's lost even that. Bonus prison. They've taken that away. That's the way you put it, isn't it? They've taken the witches, they've taken. Okay. So, bring this all together. Back to my question. Do we have sympathy for the devil? Whether you're convinced or not, what you've got here is a discussion. And one of the key things in critical, exploratory responses is discussion, is the ability to debate. The higher up you go with English literature, the more tentative your answers get. Okay? And that's where we are here. I think there's a case to be answered at least. Yeah. She invites in the supernatural. She makes that choice. Come, you spirits, do this. Yeah. When she says he hasn't got the illness, that's necessary here. He hasn't got the illness that's necessary here. It suggests she has. Yes, she has an inhuman attitude. In Act 2, Scene 2, when Macbeth is just moaning about guilt and trauma and everything, remember she has that line where she says, the dead, the sleeping, the dead, that's all they are. Childhood. That's a pretty inhuman attitude to life, isn't it? And of course, yes, she manipulates. Very, without her, I think we happily say, and Macbeth would never, certainly be. But on the flip side, we have to address the argument, the influence. To what degree is she under some kind of control? Is she just influenced, or has she already been taken over largely by them? We have to think about her humanity and the hints of the trauma that she's experienced. Definitely into that as a child, and also potentially with her. The humanity that we see amongst her and the trauma that she's potentially experienced. And then, of course, her intense vulnerability. See it in that first scene one, but as a woman. If nothing else, it's definitely worth considering the idea. Lady Macbeth, woman in a man's world, just knows how to get where she's get. After all, takes part in the planning of the murder of Duncan. No one else. Maybe she's just ready to make that sacrifice. Anyway, I hope that's helped and allows you. I've got a feeling about Lady Macbeth. Summer coming there, and incidentally, want to think further. Just a feeling, and there is based on nothing at all. That one scene 7 could be a very key scene, maybe even the bit with the baby being mentioned, that bit where she's convinces him. You can get very far there straight away by remembering that Lady Macbeth convinces Macbeth not by taunting his masculinity, One, she doesn't taunt his masculinity. Okay, when she talks about him being a man, she's kind of encouraging him. She's saying, "Hey, tell you what, you'd be a heck of more a man if you were a king, wouldn't you?" She's more flirty. But secondly, it doesn't work. When she says all that stuff about being a man, he doesn't react. He reacts to the baby. So, well worth thinking about. Okay, thank you very much.